I realized over time that I was chasing something that didn't exist. I was trying to chase happiness that way. And I realized that all of these procedures really wasn't making me happy. And the second part of the book is all about the internal work.
What if the truth came in a gel cap and we could just pop it in our mouths and forget about it? Well, it doesn't. And we can't. But we can laugh in the face of reality while plotting our survival. Welcome to the Truth Tastes Funny podcast. I am your host, Hersh Rephun. And if my guests can handle the truth, so can you. Open wide, folks. Here it comes. My guest today on Truth Tastes Funny is Sandra Lena Silverman. She's an author. She's a lover of all things beauty and wellness. Her first book was called From Bullshit to Botox. And her second book, which is not out yet, is expected next year, is From Bullshit to Broken Hearts. So we have a lot to talk about. And as you can tell from the titles, Sandy doesn't shy away from humor or from reality. And so on Truth Tastes Funny, I can't think of a more perfect guest. To give you a little background on Sandra, as part of her determination to turn back the clock on aging, which also makes her a perfect guest for me. She's tried every skincare product, every treatment, every procedure, surgery from lasers to Botox to filler to facelifts and breast surgeries. And she's willing to talk about all of it for the benefit of our audience. And welcome, Sandra, to
Thank you
Truth
very
Tastes
much.
Funny.
Thank you for inviting me.
And even better, you are coming to us from Miami, from my hometown. And so I
Yes.
have a little bit of nostalgia in talking about that. But I wanna hear your story. I want to know, just on the face of it, why are you so open with your life? Why do you not have that kind of fear that a lot of us have about sharing, truths about our life?
I've always been really honest about everything. So whatever procedure I've gotten or marital problems, I've always been just very honest and open about it. I just feel like it's liberating to be open and to share my stories with other people and hopefully help empower other women to either, do a procedure, not be scared, or talk about, a failed relationship or whatever it is. So that's just my personality. I just feel like it's just how I operate.
And you also, I think, like me, the word that appears more often in my book than almost any other is bullshit.
Mhm.
Because I think a large part of selling the truth is dealing with the bullshit and getting rid of it. And I think a lot of us at various points in our lives, sometimes it's a disposition that we have, but other times it's just there's a tolerance for bullshit in the world that I think is hard to understand, because I understand if we're younger and we're kind of like a little rose colored in our view of the world. But as we live life, the bullshit falls away, and it's like, we just don't want it anymore. It's like
No.
I just don't want it unless it's real. When did you? What was your? Tell us a little bit about your childhood and where you grew up and so forth.
So I grew up in Maryland and I had a fairly normal childhood. I went to a Catholic school, went to a Catholic college. I lived in Baltimore after college. So it was fairly normal. I, was in sports and that sort of thing. And I didn't really get into the procedures until age 27. So
Hmm.
I was, a teenager in the 80s. So we really didn't have access to,
Right.
to a lot
Right.
of procedures.
So what was the uh, initial factor that inspired you to have surgery?
So the first procedure, so when I met my ex-husband, I was 26. And a month into the relationship, he looked at me one day and he was like, "Wow, your body's soft. You need to go to the gym." And that's the very first time in my life that I ever felt like there was something wrong with me. And being 26 and not really understanding what was going on, I was like, oh, okay, I guess I need to go to the gym. But I feel like subconsciously I started feeling insecure. And and I started, the first procedure was a breast augmentation. And then it just kind of went from there. So the first part of the book is all the external work that I did, but I realized over time that I was chasing something that didn't exist. I was trying to chase happiness that way. And I realized that all of these procedures really wasn't making me happy. And the second part of the book is all about the internal work.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's, and yeah. And then and along with that comes, your interest in holistic medicine and
Yes.
coaching and
Mhm.
life coaching, personal training. So it's, so up until that point, like as a kid, as a teenager, even, you were not insecure.
No, not ever. So I honestly, even in my early 20s, I dated a lot. I never felt insecure at all until that moment. And at the time, I don't think consciously I even felt insecure. I think this was all subconscious because all of a sudden I go on this complete journey of trying to be perfect. And, at the end of the day, it really didn't make me happy, but I learned a lot. So I'm able to
Yeah.
share all of that
And,
knowledge.
and was your ex-husband perfect?
Absolutely not. Not even close.
Yeah.
So we're in
And
the
was,
process now of getting divorced.
yeah. Oh, okay. So you were married for a while. It wasn't.
We were together for 27 years.
Oh, okay. So
But
you
we had four
were
separations.
okay. So it was a long road. It was a long
Yes.
road with the two of you, and it seems like there was some trying, a lot of effort at reconciliation. What were those breakups and getting back together predicated on?
So the first time he left was in 2006, and he left because we weren't getting along, and he left for 30 days, and he did this whole like, I want a 30-day break. We got back together. At that point, things weren't really that bad, but then by 2009, things were starting to get really bad, and I should have left then, and I didn't. And a lot of it was because of fear, and I talk about that in the second book. I was scared. I didn't know what the other side looked like. I didn't know what kind of people he would have around my kids, so I stayed. Was that the right thing to do? Probably not. So it just went from there. There was a lot of infidelity. It was just kind of like living in flight or fight every day where I had so much anxiety, and it's not like a good way to live. The second separation was in 2016 when we first moved to Miami. He left. So here I'm living in a strange place. We just moved from Baltimore to Miami 9 years ago, and then he leaves me. So then I had to deal with that, but we got back together. And then the third separation was in 2023, where he left again for 5 months. Then we got back together. And then the final one was him leaving last summer. And when that happened, I was like, no more, I'm filing for divorce.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and
Rob.
we talk a lot about relationships on the show,
Mhm.
uh, truth in relationships, and it is difficult to be honest about everything and just
Yeah,
confront things because a lot of us are not confrontational by nature. You know,
right.
are you? Um, Tell us a little bit about you as a person.
I would say I was very confrontational when I was younger, much more than now. Now I'm like super laid back, super chill. But in my younger years, we had just started our company, so it was stressful. So we're building a business and that sort of thing. We owned a business together. So I was much more confrontational then than I am now. Now I'm much more laid back, but I'm also 54. So I've
Yeah.
learned over time how
Were
to be
the
less.
issues were the issues um what were the issues around? Did they have to do with health, wellness, beauty? The what First of all, what was the business, and then what were the issues?
Oh, so the business is residential lending. So we started this company together while we were dating. So we started a company, we barely knew each other. And then we got engaged and then we got married. So it has nothing to do with wellness and beauty. I just started that whole journey because I had done all the procedures and all the treatments. So then I thought, well, I should write a book about this because people
Yeah.
ask me all the time, all these questions. So it was perfect to write the book and to be able to share all my knowledge and have experts in the book as well. So that had nothing to do with my past life as a co-founder of this company.
Right.
Yeah.
And what happened now that so you were staying together all this
So
time,
we were
or
staying together all the time, but it was very rocky. So there was a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, like I said, a lot of infidelity. And I wasn't always perfect, especially in I would say the first 8 years of the marriage. But then I shifted because at this point I have kids and I'm much more calm. And then he just went on. It was like opening Pandora's box and he never closed it.
yeah. And how many kids do you have together?
We have two. So we have two kids. They're 21 and 22. I have a son and a daughter.
Yeah. I mean, that does change everything. It changes everything in terms of business. It changes, what I find it in a way, I have five kids and it's
You have
like,
five.
yeah, five. My wife and I have an 11-year-old and a 17-year-old. And then with my ex-wife, I have three
Oh,
grown
wow.
kids that are 20, 28, 31, and 33. And, but I find that kids are a grounding influence. But I think sometimes for some partners, spouses, the kids are not a grounding influence. And if anything, it makes people
People
antsy,
answer,
you
Mhm.
know?
you know,
The kids weren't really a factor for the infidelity. I think that what happened was once he started, he couldn't stop
Yeah.
for whatever reason. It wasn't a situation of like, oh, I made a mistake. I cheated on my wife. I made a mistake. Like this guy just kept, I mean, he's a legend. This guy kept going and going and going. I mean, I've never seen anything like it in my life. And the stories are insane and they're all in my second book, but I mean, he just didn't stop. And
And
over time, because I didn't set the right boundaries, he just became more and more disrespectful because I kept taking him back. So instead of it getting better, it continued. He got ballsier and ballsier. It just got worse and worse. And I mean, it was insane.
yeah, do you feel now like, how do you feel about the decisions you made to stay with him through those things?
I know I should have left in 2009, but looking back, I'm happy that I didn't because I couldn't control the type of people he would have around my kids.
Yeah.
Number one. So that would have been really bad for me because I don't know the type of people he would have been dating. I can imagine that they wouldn't have been people that I would ever want around my children. So I wouldn't have been able to control that narrative. And then on top of that, it's hard because I want to be with my kids all the time. Like once I had both kids a few years in, I stopped working to be a full-time mom. So I was with them, basically 24/7. So I wouldn't have been able to have that time with them if I had shared custody. And then I wouldn't have known what was going on, on the other side. So looking back, I'm happy that I stayed, even though I know that it probably wasn't the best. For me
Yeah.
personally, it was better for them, but not for me.
Yeah. No, I understand that. And what about the anti-aging interest and secrets? Obviously, for those watching, they can tell. Yeah, you do look fantastic. You
Thank
you
you.
you do not look anywhere really near your age,
Thank
but in a way that appears very natural. So a lot of it clearly is, taking care of yourself. But how did this interest in the anti-aging, uh, you know, premise evolve?
Over time, I started doing like I said, all of the procedures, but I realized that these surgeries aren't sustainable. Like you can't just go in for a liposuction because you don't feel like going to the gym. I mean, I know a lot of people do, but if you don't make those necessary changes, then fat's going to come back in another part of your body. So I realized over time, like I have to make serious changes, especially as I'm aging, going through menopause and things like that, where I had to get this under control. So a lot of it happened during COVID. So I used that time during COVID to really pull myself together and start with like lymphatic treatments and things like that. So I changed my diet, changed my workout, where I started doing a lot of weight training and worked with holistic doctors for the peptides and the reverse aging peptides. And that's been really, really helpful. So just working through all these things together and being consistent, I realized it works. And I can't pinpoint one particular thing because I do so much. So I
Yeah.
couldn't say like, oh, this peptide works over this, but I do so many things, or that like combining everything together, it does work.
Now, a lot of people will say, oh, well, someone who promotes looking great and feeling great and all that stuff, there's so much that has to do with genes. There's so much that has to do with, what their genes are. How does that factor in your case? Like in terms of your genes, your family. Oh, you froze a little bit. We'll give it a second, and we'll make a note that it froze 19 minutes in, but we'll give you a second. Let me know if you can hear me or if I appear frozen to you. Okay, we'll make a note we'll actually stop recording. So a lot of people will say, oh, this person looks great because of their genes,
Yeah. Oh,
you know.
right. Mhm.
So how do your genes kind of factor
I
into
don't
this?
think I have good genetics. So I think mine is just a lot of consistency and hard work. I don't think overall, like I had a lot of laxity in my skin, like genetically.
Yeah.
That's why I got the facelift at 47. That's why I have to do a lot of weight training to build the muscle so my skin doesn't sag. I've had, a mini tummy tuck and, various surgeries because of sagging skin. I had to cut my elbow skin. A lot of women my age wouldn't have to do that, but I had a lot of laxity in my skin. And I've also very naturally dry skin. I wouldn't say I have very good genetics.
Yeah.
But because I've got control over the situation where I'm constantly trying to make improvements and the consistency, it works. So I think I can override the genetics.
Yeah. And so in your case, you've had to maintain a balance
Yeah.
of, internal, external
Yes.
surgery procedures. Tell us about some of the procedures and what you've learned in terms of their effectiveness and what you would recommend or not recommend, or at least, your
Okay.
take.
The first thing that I recommend, whatever you're looking to do, whether it's a facelift or a tummy tuck, only go to a surgeon that specializes in that procedure. You don't want to go to somebody for a facelift who does tummy tucks and mommy makeovers and breast augmentation, because then that makes them, they're not an expert in their field. They are not an expert with just a facelift. They're doing like a quarter of the amount of facelifts that somebody who that's all they do every
Yeah.
day or facelift. So you want to go to an expert in each thing, whatever it is that you're looking to do. That would be number one. I highly recommend women to get facelifts in their 40s and not wait, because when you're that age, they can just do a mini facelift that will carry you through and make you look the most natural that you're going to look, as opposed to waiting until your 50s or 60s. Now, the other thing two things that I did that were bad that I would not recommend, you have to be very careful with liposuction. So I took the easy way out instead of doing the hard work and liposuction my knees and my stomach. My stomach, I had to fix with a mini tummy tuck. I never even needed a tummy tuck when I had my son, but because I did the liposuction, my skin sagged so much in that area, I had to repair it with a surgery. My knees are an uphill battle. I took too much fat out of my knees. So now I have to do threads in my knees to lift. I'm eventually going to cut the skin. So I do not recommend, I think it's very important to be careful with liposuction.
Mm.
Also, a lot of women, especially in Miami, are doing fat transfers for like a Brazilian butt lift with the fat transfers. And they're going to these crazy doctors who fly in from other countries and they're renting space and doing them super cheap. And these poor women are dying. They're getting infections. A lot of them die from these procedures. It's been a really bad issue, especially in Miami. So you just have to be very careful. And you have to be very careful with fillers. So I did a procedure called a Y lift where they took the filler with a cannula and they sculpt your face, but the doctor, the first time he did it, he did a great job lifting. The second time he put way too much in and my face looked like a pie. So you have to be very, very careful. And that's why I recommend get the facelift, save your money. Don't even go down the filler trap before a certain age. Get the facelift instead in your 40s. Save your money, start a facelift fund, whatever it is to save, and then just maintain from there where you don't need as much. Like right now, I'll go and get a little bit of filler, a little bit of Botox, or a thread here, a thread there, and that's all I need.
What does a thread refer
So
to?
the PDO thread that I use, it basically is a suture that's injected into your face body that lifts. But I wouldn't recommend like a face full of threads. That's why I'm saying I would get like the facelift. But for example, I would inject one here and then it ends here and then all of this lifts.
Hmm. Yeah,
Just
there
but I
were,
do like one or two at a time.
and is there so in in the bullshit to Botox book, you detail a lot of this
Yes,
stuff.
everything is in there. So whether you want to get your eyebrows microbladed, so for example, let's say that somebody hasn't had any procedures, but they want to start with something small. They want like a little bit of a refresh. So I would recommend that they do microblading for their eyebrows and eyelash extensions and maybe an eye enhancement where it's like a permanent makeup liner and then maybe a little lip enhancement with a liner and start small where it's like a little bit of an enhancement and nothing is surgical. And then you can go from there. You're not even putting filler or Botox in your face, but you're just making little improvements just to start. Dermaplaning is good where you're that's like a kind of like a razor that they use just to take off the dead skin from your face and like the little peach fuzz and it just kind of rejuvenates just like
Yeah.
little things. So I tell people all of that's in the book. So for basically for women who read the book, there's something in there for everyone because some people are completely against surgery. So I have alternative treatments as well.
Yeah. And what about some of the newer things? I don't know if they call it, I want to say red light
Oh yeah,
treatment.
so
Yeah.
that's in the book of red light therapy. That's something non-invasive. You can get a red light therapy mask and do it every day for 10 minutes. I do that every day for 10 minutes. I wear the
Yeah.
mask. Mhm.
Yeah. My college roommate is now a plastic surgeon in New York. And it's funny because years and years ago, in my family, we have this kind of turkey neck thing
Uh-huh.
or whatever. We just have this. My mom had it, and we have it. And my sister had him do it, like take care of it for her. I don't know, 20 years ago, right? And I just put it off and never did it. And now he said recently, you probably just I don't know if you even want to do it at this point. I'm 58. And he said, and I said, what difference does it make? You said anytime I want to do it. He said, yeah, I said that like 20 years
Right,
ago,
20 years ago.
you know?
So how did he correct it for your sister?
Yeah, I
He
think
cut it.
he
So it's
cut
just
it.
like it's like it's not that big of a deal. You probably stitched
Yeah.
her under her
But
chin.
but he said, doing it then would have been better
Yeah,
because, there'd be less risk and
exactly.
less factors and different things to consider. And now that my whole thing is all about truth, selling the truth, truth tastes
Uh-huh.
funny, I'm like, you know, I would have to think about that and in terms of my brand, would
Right,
I
exactly.
would it be on brand for me to have plastic surgery, or would it be on brand to leave it as it is, or would it be on brand to have it and be open about it
I
because it
say
might
you
make me
have it and
feel
you're
better?
open about it
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
you're
because
telling the truth.
yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't pretend to be 20 years younger.
Yeah.
Your whole thing is saying, yeah, I look younger than I am. Tell us about how you feel and, about what having written when did you write the book? When did the
The book
first book
was
come out?
released last November. So the book took
Okay.
about 6 months. I started the book the year before, and it took about 6 months. So my co-writer, Erica Florentine, she's incredible. Took us about 6 months total, and that's with interviewing all the experts. And then last April, I had the book and I didn't have a name. I didn't have a
Yeah.
title. So my friend Haya had a burst of energy one night at 3 in the morning and came up with 13 titles and subtitles. That's how I got the title. I didn't have a title
Yeah.
for my own book. So, but it was released it went for pre-sale last October. And then the physical book was released in November.
And how has it been received?
Great. So it became a bestseller pretty quickly with the Kindle. So we ended up doing
Yeah.
a marketing campaign and it became a bestseller while it was pre-sale. So that was amazing. And it's doing well. Now it's in like South Korea, it's in Australia. Because some of the podcasts, I was on a podcast with the doctor in Australia and she has a big following. So now the book is being sold there. I don't know how it ended up in South Korea. Possibly because I was in an article for People magazine and they were talking about, oh, she had $300,000 worth of surgeries and 25 procedures because no one talks about this stuff to
Yeah.
that degree. And so from there, it went to the Daily Mail. And then I think from there, it just went to like the Manila Times, the Beirut Times, and now it's in South Korea.
Yeah, and and obviously in South Korea, I don't know what they call it, but basically a title can do so much.
Yeah.
You really owe your friend a lot.
Oh, I know. No, she's
You know,
amazing. I think that's why the Kindle, why it became a bestseller so quickly is because of the title. The title is
yeah.
just so interesting.
Now, let's talk about the new book, the bullshit to
Uh-huh.
brokenhearted. Um, what do you get into in that one?
So the new book is about my crazy marriage and all the separations, narcissism. So I have experts in that book that talk about narcissism, talk about they feel my ex is a textbook narcissist. So, and then actually dating at the time I was 53, I started dating 2 weeks after the last separation. So that whole journey's in there. And then I dated multiple people and I talk about all of it. So I don't use names, but
Yeah,
everybody's in there. So anybody that was in my life between then and like April, May, they're in the book.
they're in the book. And can you share any stories that stand out for you that are in or not in the book?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. So my ex, when we were married, this was after the second separation. I was in Disney World with my kids and their friends. We were all in one room. And at this time at our house, we had a ring camera. So the ring camera set up, it rings to all of our phones, like my phone,
Hmm.
kids' phones. They're 12 and 13 at the time, 14, somewhere around there. And all of a sudden, I wake up to a phone call on the camera at 5 a.m. So we're all in Disney World. He's in Miami. I wake up and I'm like, hello? And this girl's standing at the front door. And I said, oh, can I help you? And she's like, oh, I'm here for David Silverman. And I said, okay, who are you? And she goes, oh, my name's Naomi. And I'm like, what? So the dogs are barking. He eventually comes downstairs because the dogs wake him up. And I'm like, oh, Naomi's at the door for you. And he's like, who? And he looked at her and he's like, no, wrong house. I'm like, no, 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 it's not the wrong house. She's standing at our front door and the camera just rang to my phone. And he looked at her and said, you're not what I ordered. I was like, this guy is a legend. Like, we have a ring camera that rings to all of our phones. So, of course, the next day I was so embarrassed. I tried to play it off to my kids, like, oh, wrong house. And my son's friend was like, oh, does he have a side chick? I was so embarrassed. But this is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about, like things
Yeah.
that you would never dream of in a million years. These stories are in this book.
Well, this is where, Sandy, you have to have you have to have a good sense of humor, but you also have to balance humor with being allowed to be pissed off and not let the other person off the hook just because you are able to laugh at it. You know what I mean?
Well, he after that was like, I'm going to therapy, I'm gonna get help. And he did, and he was good for a while. And then it started all over again. So it
Well,
was
he
just
just
like,
needs to be more specific when ordering, I think,
I
you
mean,
know.
but who does that? Who orders somebody to their home when they know there's a Ring camera? That
Yeah,
rings to
that's
all of our, and then after that, he disconnected the camera. I'm like, and a lot of it's my fault now that I see I didn't set the right boundaries, of course.
yeah.
I should have left. I mean, I should have said, I'm not going to tolerate this behavior because, like I said, it just kept getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. Well, and as you pointed out, you were in a difficult position with the
Mhm.
kids and everything, and in a way, you would rather have some kind of tabs on what's happening
Yes.
than not know, and that is important. So how has it? What is the relationship like with him?
Now, so when he left last year, he had been cheating with a girl that he was paying. So this was a paid person that he was
Hmm.
cheating with. And I only found that out in 2023 because we had the 5 month separation and I caught him with her one night randomly. And after he said, "Oh, I'm not seeing anybody. We're just taking a break. We're just taking time to ourselves." So the next day, my friend we found her Instagram. The next day she went on the Instagram and I didn't know anything much. I didn't know much about Instagram back then. Now, I've gained a following because of the
Yeah,
book, but I didn't know what highlighted stories were. So she goes on and watches all these highlighted stories and she's like, "Sandy, this has been going on since the winter of 2021." Because the
yeah,
girl highlighted all these had him in like her stories, like not really his face, but you could see his hands. They'd be at dinner, they were on trips, all these different things. So I didn't even have to hire a private investigator because it was all there and this girl
yeah.
posted everything. So he was paying the girl. They broke up after I caught them that night. We got back together, and then a year later he leaves again to be with the same girl. The relationship, as long as she was in the picture, because I knew what was going on and I was so beyond disrespectful, I wasn't speaking to him. So I had him blocked. They broke up 5 times in the past year. Now they're completely done. He's realized that why should I have to pay somebody to like me? She was much younger than him.
He was still
Um,
paying her while he was dating her?
yes. And it was an
Yeah,
obscene amount of money each month. So now they're completely broken up. And I'm very nice to him. Like we have a good relationship. And it's very important for my kids as well for us to be very cordial with one another. Never going back to him. I would never in a million years. But I am very nice as long as that person's not in the picture. But if
yeah.
she is
I get
ever in
it.
the picture again, absolutely not. I don't respect it. I think it's awful. I think it's beyond disrespectful. So that's where we are right now. So we do
Yeah,
have a nice cordial relationship, but he also is not with her. He can date anybody in the entire world that he wants. I don't care. I would be
yeah,
nice to them, but not this situation.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's the factor also that you probably over all of this time kind of mourned the
Oh
relationship.
yeah. So that time, those 5 months, I was so upset over that breakup. I cried for 5 months. I cried every day. I was so upset. I was so scared. I mourned the relationship then. So when it happened again, I was able to just move on a lot faster because that time was almost like a death. It was just so devastating. This last year, like I said, I met somebody 2 weeks later. I started seeing this other person and I was having fun
Yeah. Yeah, how is it going now in terms of your
dating.
relationships, your
Oh.
the dating scene and all of that?
So this past year has been quite a journey, and that I talk about that in the book. And so I've dated multiple people, nothing serious. I haven't been in a committed relationship with anyone. I've just been having a lot of fun. This summer, I decided I'm not going to go on dates. I went to Europe this summer, spent the entire summer basically alone. Everybody that I met while I was abroad, I really just didn't pursue. Then I get to the Hamptons in August and I met somebody randomly the first night I went out. And it's not serious. So I've seen him for the past like 5 weeks, but it's kind of long distance. But that's basically it. I'm not really dating and just kind of focusing on me.
Yeah, well, that's good, and it's also good to be free from the, uh, when you're trying to keep something together.
Yeah.
I was divorced early. We had three children together, so we had to have a well, we didn't have to have a cordial relationship, but we did.
Mhm.
But I think we got divorced early enough that we were 32, and I
Oh,
think
yeah.
the kids were between 4 and 12, and it was like, I think, while my ex-wife did not want to get divorced at that time, I saw the writing on the wall that we were growing apart. It was
Yeah.
going to get worse, not better. We tried.
Right.
It was going to get worse, not better. So I was like, we don't need this to devolve into a kind of a bad scene,
Which is
where
smart.
we're miserable. We're kind of miserable now, but we're willing to put up with it. But that's just because we're so different. It's like we don't hate each other with a passion. We didn't really do anything to each other. We just didn't treat each other nicely because
Right.
we were not happy.
Yeah.
So it's like, and she remarried, I remarried. She had two kids, I had two more kids. So it's been cordial over, I've been married to my wife now for 20 years, which is 10 years longer than my first wife and I were
Yeah.
married. So,
So you're with the right person now.
yeah. But one thing I learned is that it's not supposed to be painful, dramatic, hard, just laborious. Like it's not supposed to make you angry
No.
every day, you
It's
know?
definitely not. I will tell you, I do want to get married again. I already decided I want to get married in Capri. I was there this summer.
Yeah.
It was my favorite place on the planet. So I have everything set up. I have a wedding photographer, I have hair and makeup in Capri, and I know where I want to get married. I just haven't found my husband yet.
Yeah. Well, I think you'll know now from all this experience, you'll know
Yeah,
when you
I'll
find
know.
him, and you won't be like, well, I don't know. I have this makeup person and I have the venue booked. I
Yeah,
better do this right now.
yeah.
But you'll,
He'll
but
appear
you'll,
one day and I'll know when I meet him.
he'll appear,
Yeah.
and most likely you'll say, okay, well, here's where we're getting married. And he'll be
Uh-huh.
like, all right, right. Now, in terms of your career now as an author, tell me what you're doing and what the next things are for you.
So I just finished the second book, which will be
Right.
released next year. And I started my own show called Party's Over. We just filmed the first 15 episodes. It's more of a talk show slash podcast that will be released on YouTube and different podcast platforms. And like in the next few weeks. And then we're filming the next 15 episodes in the beginning of October. And they're fun. So the episodes consist of two segments. Segment A, segment B. So segment A, we talk about reverse aging, and I have guests as well. Segment B is all about toxic relationships. Same thing, I have guests. And then we do spillets. And spillets are people write in a question and then I have a co-host, or some days I don't have a co-host. And it's just a fun show, but it
Yeah.
encompasses pretty much everything that I talk about in my books.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
where can people see it?
That's going to be aired on YouTube and just different podcast platforms, all the podcast platforms. And then I'll do snippets. I'll do snippets on um Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah. And where can people find you? Where can they find the books?
So they can find the book on Amazon or Barnes and Noble, and
Right.
they can find me on Instagram at Sandra Lena Silverman or my website, sandralenasilverman.com.
Yeah, and it's Lena, Lena.
Lena. And also,
Right.
if anybody has questions, I do this for free. They can contact me. I'll set up a FaceTime. It's if they have questions, they want me to look at their face or their hair or whatever it is, or they want some suggestions, I do that as well.
That's really awesome. That's
Thank
wonderful.
you.
I mean, do you have in your mind like, oh, I want to reach a certain number of people, or I want to,
Yeah, I want to reach a lot of people, especially with parties over, because I think it's going to be so informative but fun for people to watch, and I think it's going to be great just to help empower women if they have questions or they just so they know they're not alone, like they have somebody out there who is willing to talk about all the failures that I've had with the relationship and also, all the procedures and that, I'm not afraid to discuss it. And, I'm very vulnerable about it. So I think it helps other women to watch and to see where, I mean, everybody can relate to one of those things, either a
yeah.
procedure they want to do, or they're in a bad relationship, or they want to know more about narcissism or gaslighting and love bombing and all the things that we talk about on the show.
And, and finally, I was going to ask it before about narcissism. I was going to say how has the book and all the exposure and everything affected David, or
Well, I don't
like,
know yet
not that
because
you
the book,
care really.
yeah, the book isn't out yet. So I don't
No, I
know.
know that book isn't out, but the
Yeah,
other
no, the
book is out.
first book doesn't really talk much about the marriage. Only one
Right, right.
chapter, kind of a little bit. I have been on podcasts that he's listened to, and he's like, take it down, and I'm like, no. So I told him flat out, I was like,
Yeah.
you've given me the best content of my life and this amazing platform. So that I have to be grateful for because I couldn't make these stories up if I tried.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and it's wonderful. I would love to have you back on next year
That
when
would be
you're
amazing. Thank you.
when the new book is out.
Okay, great.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Sandra
you.
Lena
This was
Silverman.
great. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for tuning into Truth Tastes Funny. If you enjoyed the experience, please leave a 5-star review and share this podcast with your friends.